right, guys, welcome aboard here. Michael Cohen on the Sports Talk Nation. We are going to review and give out grades for the NFL draft, specifically on the local teams here in the tri-state area, the Jets and the Giants. Let's go right into it. So the NFL draft is now come and gone, and of course, everyone likes to jump on the grades. They like to kind of in a way, it's overreaction Sunday in many ways. People go out there, they give A's, B's, C's, D's, based on picks that they like, that they didn't like coming out of the NFL draft. But the truth is, as we all know, we won't know what the real result is of this draft for a couple of years. Case in point, a few years ago. Remember the Trevor Lawrence draft? Everyone was high on Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people were high on the quarterbacks that came out of that draft. Guys like Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and that turned out to be not such a great draft when we look back at it now here in 2024, going now to 2025. So with these drafts, you just never know how it's going to pan out. So this was a fascinating one. Obviously, the Sheduer Sanders story has certainly been the one that's taken over, dropping from possibly being the top-rated quarterback in this draft or second-best quarterback in this draft, dropping not just out of the first round, but dropping all the way to round number 5, and teams that everyone thought would be in on him, like the Raiders, the Steelers, the Browns, over and over again, passing on him. At one point, of course, obviously the Giants will get into their pick for Jaxson Dart, going up and getting Jaxson Dart instead. We saw a lot of other quarterbacks go before Sheduer ever got taken, and then when it was all said and done, the Browns ended up taking him anyway. And, of course, a lot being made about the way Sanders handled his pre-draft process, the way his father, certainly Deion Sanders, was very outspoken about where he would like to see his son go and not go. So a lot of things played into Sheduer Sanders' drop, other than the fact that he was an okay quarterback in college. And let's be honest, this was not a prime quarterback draft per the experts. Not to mention, we saw this draft take a new and disturbing twist when Sheduer Sanders was getting prank called, which turned out to be from Jeff Ulbricht's own son. That's right, the former defensive coordinator and interim head coach of the New York Jets, who is now the defensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. His son apparently was the one behind the crank call, and there was an apology that's out there on Twitter now, reposted by Adam Schefter. My goodness, I mean, this has hit bizarre proportions. It was absolutely outrageous. Say what you want to say about Sheduer Sanders as a player or how he handled the pre-draft process. The fact that he went through that is completely and totally outrageous. And you know what? I'm rooting for the kid. I'm rooting for this guy to go out to Cleveland, and if the Browns give him a shot, really, truly give him a shot to turn that franchise around, that would be a heck of a story if that ever does happen. But my goodness, Jeff Ulbricht, a Jets connection. Why does it always come back to somebody who's connected to the Jets? Why? Why does it always happen that way? So, with that being said, as that story is still hovering over and still being discussed locally here in New York, both the Jets and Giants, I thought had two distinctly very different drafts, because from the Jets standpoint, start there, they were just addressing needs. And you felt at the end of this, and they were building around what they have already. They want to make Justin Fields work in New York. They didn't draft any quarterbacks. They did sign a quarterback undrafted out of Missouri in Brady Cook. But to be fair, they didn't go out there, make a big splash for any of the names that were out there, like a Will Howard or a Kyle McCord. And they didn't do any of that. They want this to be focused on Justin Fields having as much success and giving him an opportunity to have as much success as possible. So I give a lot of credit to Darren Mougey and Aaron Glenn in that regard, saying, let's not rock the boat. Let's give this young man an opportunity to show at the age of 26, as he's going into the prime of his career, that he can certainly take his game to the next level in a way that he hadn't, let's say, in Chicago or even in Pittsburgh over the last handful of years. So I understand from that standpoint. And we saw that right away with the first pick. that the Jets made it with 7th overall by taking the tackle out of Missouri, Armand Membo, and that just solidifies this offensive line. I know it's not the sexiest pick in the world because a lot of people wanted to see Tyler Warren. Even I was kind of curious about seeing Tyler Warren picked up by the Jets because he just presents so many problems matchup-wise as far as a receiver, what he can do as a runner, what he can do in pass blocking. He would have been a very interesting pick and a dynamic one at 7, very interesting choice. But when in doubt, and especially when you have a new regime, usually you see teams go for, the smart move is to go for the tackle to try to build an offensive line. The Jets do that in Mumbo. And look, he fits the bill, 6'4", 332. He's going to play right tackle. He was very successful in college. Only gave up 1 sack in college. That was it. He is a physical presence, and you take a look at that offensive line for the Jets, 3/5 of their offensive line now starters are first-round picks. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Dallas Cowboys years ago during the, and late part of the Tony Romo era going into the Dak Prescott era. And I know for a lot of people, why would you want to compare that to the Cowboys? But for years, they had a lot of guys who were all first-round picks on an offensive line. And when they had Ezekiel Elliott there, they were regarded as the best offensive line in football for a couple of years. So the Jets have a chance to do something with that, to be one of the top offensive lines in the league if Membo stays healthy and plays well. We'll see how that comes together. So I certainly understand where they were going with that first-round pick. They addressed tight end later, taking Mason Taylor, the son of Jason Taylor, the former Dolphin and New York Jet. Interesting pick. I think a lot of people have had different takes in this. Look, he's big, he's athletic, 6'5", he has good hands, soft hands, makes a lot of tough catches in tight spots, is going to be an open target down the middle of the field and in the corners of the end zones, potentially for Fields, a guy you can't miss. So I think from that regard, it's very good. Not necessarily regarded as a guy who's going to get a lot of yak or yards after the catch. If you're looking for that, and I kind of, just kind of going through this here, there are certainly other tight ends out there that the Jets could have considered. Elijah Rojo, who went to Seattle, is a guy who has maybe a little more speed, maybe more of a receiver. Jets could have gone that route. They decided not to. There was also an individual out there, also Rondé Gatson II. Big target out of Syracuse, went to the Chargers in the 5th round. Another guy who's more of a tight end / hybrid receiver. Again, the Jets decided to go with Taylor, who, yes, is a pretty good receiver, but mostly, I guess, kind of a blocker, a guy who's going to make some tough catches in tough spots. We'll see how that goes. But a lot of people were kind of mixed on that pick when it was all said and done. I'll say this overall for the Jets, I thought it was kind of an underwhelming draft. There are other places I thought they could have addressed. I would have loved to see them really address safety. They really didn't do that right away. They really didn't do that necessarily, although they did pick up the kid from Alabama, in Malachi Moore, who can play both corner and safety. But still, if you wanted a safety, let's say like an R.J. Mickens, the Jets didn't go that route. Mickens went later on to the Chargers. They didn't address interior defensive line. It was kind of upsetting when the Bills jumped the Jets to take Deion Walter out of Kentucky. Guy's like 6'7", didn't have a great year last year, but imagine having a 6'7" defensive lineman right there, right next to Quinn Williams. That would have been very enticing. And I thought, as far as receivers concerned, they could have done a little bit better. I have concerns about Arian Smith. I know a lot of people like the speed of Arian Smith, but there's been a lot of talk about his hands and that he has a lot of drops. Had 10 drops last year out of Georgia. That is certainly a major concern. He's going to have to work on that, obviously, and improve that. But the upside is there for a guy like Arian Smith, who comes out, who certainly has good size, 6 feet, has good speed, but ran a 4.3640. But can he be more consistent in the passing game? There was one receiver in particular that I thought that could have been an interesting pickup for the Jets late in like the 3rd, 4th round. Would have been Dante Thornton Jr., but he was taken a pick before the Jets by the Raiders, so there was nothing you can do about that. He was 6'5", had, again, a guy who's 6'5" has a lot of speed. I think he ran like a 4.3040. Would have been a very interesting pick for the Jets to get him in that spot, but still, they instead go with Arian Smith. Maybe more of a special teams guy. I've heard that get thrown around a little bit. But again, overall, I thought it wasn't the draft that it's going to jump off the pages and make people go, yeah, here we go, here the Jets are back. I'm not going to sit there and say that at all. So I would, if I had to give it a grade, as premature as it is, I would say B plus. Or I would say, yeah, B minus, C plus, somewhere in that range, B minus, C plus. They address needs. You get that. They address the need of the right tackle. They got a 10 tight end who can help in a passing game. They got a couple of guys in the secondary, a quarterback in as Thomas, who a lot of people think could be a starter in this league at some point. A lot of people like him. That could end up being the steal of the draft for the Jets when it's all said and done. Malachi Moore, who could be a very interesting prospect, more of a hybrid in the secondary, and we'll see what you get out of Arian Smith. So I would say B minus, C plus, somewhere in that regard. Remember, this is the first year of a new regime as they're trying to rebuild this thing in their image. And I think what you're seeing from Glenn and Mougey is they're looking for guys who are going to be tough, who are going to be able to contribute in many different ways, and are guys who can be lunch pail guys. I would say it's a very low-key draft by the Jets. It's more of, let's see how the pieces are that fit right now. Because you take a look at the depth chart for the Jets. Let's just do this right now. You take a look at the depth chart for the Jets between last year and this year. Outside of, let's say, a C.J. Mosley and obviously Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, aren't a whole heck of a lot of changes as far as the prospects of the starting lineup is concerned on both sides of the ball. So from that regard, I would say it's more of Glenn Mougey trying to see what they have this year. They filled some immediate needs, and then going forward into 2026, you'll see what you can do as far as if you have to make drastic changes and where you're going to make those changes. Maybe quarterback, maybe running back. We'll see when we get to that point. Receiver, we'll see when we get to that point. But I think for a first step, it's solid, B minus. Go from there. As far as the Giants are concerned, look, the Giants are under a lot of pressure. Joe Shane, Brian Dable are incredible amount of pressure to get it right this year, right? It's now or never for them. They were given this year. A lot of people thought that they should have been going to the end of last season, the way things went down for the Giants, but they returned. And I thought Joe Shane had a huge draft. In fact, it may be a draft that ends up, if it works out, ends up saving his career. It really could end up saving his career here in New York. Takes Abdul Carter, slam dunk pick right there at number 3. Guy who can rush the passer at 12 sacks last year at Penn State. High motor off the edge, and certainly put him in that defense with guys like Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns. That just makes the Giant defense that much more dynamic. They even added to that by taking Darius Alexander out of Toledo in the second round. So you put him in there with obviously Dexter Lawrence. Man, that front seven now looks pretty good for the New York Giants all of a sudden. So they answered those questions. Then they add to their running game. Remember, the running game has been a big issue for the Giants, especially with losing Saquon Barkley. They bring in Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State, ran for over 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns in his career, and can be a pretty decent receiver as well. We'll see how he translates to the NFL. He comes out of the 4th round out of Arizona State. Could he be the featured back for the Giants moving forward? We'll find out, but that's an interesting pick as well. But a lot of this also hinges on what the Giants did, obviously, by going back into this first round and taking Jaxson Dart, the quarterback, out of Ole Miss. And again, the Giants, if you believe reports and rumors that are out there, they didn't have a good interview with Sheduer Sanders, that Brian Dable didn't have a good meeting with him. I know Dable didn't want to address that, obviously, but they take Jaxson Dart, who has the size, has the arm strength. I mean, you watch his tape, it's impressive to watch. The ball just zips out of his hands. Can give the Giants the RPOs that they're looking for as well. Has a lot of grit. If you see a lot of tape, is kind of a gritty guy. Takes hits. I think there was one video where I saw him take a hit and he was like bleeding or something like that from his nose or from his mouth, and just kept on going. So he's got a little bit of that going as well. Will he be the franchise guy? I don't know. And it's an interesting situation because the Giants have 2 veteran quarterbacks now in Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. You add Dart to the mix. Ideally, if this was a ideal situation, kind of like, let's just say, turn it back, years ago, 20 years ago, 21 years ago, 2004, when the Giants drafted Eli Manning out of Ole Miss, that was the first year for Tom Coughlin as the head coach. And it made a little more sense, obviously, wasn't as much pressure. You bring in Kurt Warner, let him start, and then eventually move Eli into the starting role. How is this going to work out this year for Dable and company if, let's say, the Giants get off to a rough start with Russell Wilson or even Jameis Winston? How much longer do the Giants wait before they put Dart in? And is there going to be pressure to win once they put Dart in? And what will have that effect be on Dable, Shane, and the rest of the staff moving forward? So I think this is a very interesting question for the Giants. It looks great on paper. I think that there's a chance they could save their jobs if everything works out great. But if push comes to shove, what is it going to be for the Giants this year? I think this is the most polarizing question of this draft for the Giants is, what is it going to be with Jaxson Dart? Is he going to? When are they going to start him? Okay, if he proves that he is ready to go, I don't think they're going to start him right away. I think they're going to start Russell Wilson at the start of the season. But when are they going to pull the plug on that? And what will the record be when they put Jaxson Dart in? And what does it mean moving forward, as I just said? And if, let's say, Dable and Shane are out of here at the end of 2025 and the new staff comes in, do they move forward with Jaxson Dart? Does he play well enough that it gives confidence to the new staff moving forward and to move forward with him? Or do the Giants hit the reset button again in 2026 when everyone thinks this could be a better quarterback draft? We'll see. So those are the questions that have to wait for the Giants. If I had to give it a grade, a lot of people have been throwing around A's and A pluses. I would go B plus A minus for the Giants in this draft, because as much as I like the moves they made for the defense, the quarterback is the big question mark. On paper, it looks great, but we'll see how it works out once we get towards the season. So I would say B plus, A minus for Big Blue, C plus, B minus for Gang Green. Those are my draft grades here for 2025. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time.